Have you ever worked tirelessly on your healing, faced your deepest shadows, only to be left feeling completely empty and unmotivated? If that void has you thinking you've failed, what if I told you the opposite is true? According to the psychologist Carl Jung, that feeling of emptiness is the ultimate proof that your healing worked. He discovered that the old engine that ran on anxiety and the need for approval doesn't just get an update, it completely shuts down. The problem is, your new, authentic motivation hasn't started yet, leaving you in that silent, confusing space. And that space is exactly what we need to talk about. Today, I'm going to show you why this loss of motivation isn't a setback, but a crucial stage, a kind of death before a rebirth. We'll cover the phases every healed person navigates and the precise indicators that your authentic self is ready to emerge. By the end, you will see why feeling unmotivated after healing is your soul's way of saying it's done performing, and you'll learn how to spot the quiet signals of your true desires. Are you exhausted from trying to muster enthusiasm for goals that used to define you? Do you feel a pang of guilt, thinking you should be driven, but everything just feels hollow? Jung's discovery was that integrating your shadow does more than heal you. It fundamentally reconfigures the very mechanics of motivation. He understood that the shadow holds not just our negative aspects, but what he called the thing a person has no wish to be, which can include suppressed positive traits, like creativity or assertiveness. When you reclaim these disowned parts, your entire relationship with what you want transforms. In his work, Jung noted that those who complete shadow work often go through a motivational dissolution, the collapse of all prior drives that were secretly rooted in compensating for these rejected parts. Here's the staggering truth he uncovered. The majority of your past motivation stemmed from what he termed shadow projection. You were unconsciously pursuing external goals because you saw in them what you couldn't accept in yourself. As Jung wrote, if you imagine someone who is brave enough to withdraw all his projections, then you get an individual who is conscious of a pretty thick shadow. This withdrawal is the hallmark of successful shadow work, but it inevitably leaves you for a time without a map. Before healing, maybe you were driven to prove you weren't lazy by judging unmotivated people, or you chased success to project your own power onto external achievements. If your drive came from proving you weren't something, weak, unworthy, you were running on projection. Once shadow work integrates these traits, the need to prove anything evaporates, and with it, the very fuel that powered you. You assumed facing your shadow would make you tougher. Instead, you feel you've lost your edge. What you've truly lost isn't motivation. It's what Jung called the persona, your public-facing performed identity. Jung's most startling insight was that most people confuse persona-driven behavior with genuine motivation. The persona is the mask we adopt for social acceptance. When you integrate your shadow, this persona collapses because you can no longer sustain the false self. Consider the difference. Persona motivation says, I must achieve this to prove I am worthy. Authentic motivation says, I feel drawn to this because it expresses my true nature. The persona needs to be the best to feel valuable. The authentic self engages in an activity because the process is inherently fulfilling. This shift often causes disorientation because most of us have never learned to listen to our authentic desires. Jung himself lived this transformation. After his definitive break with Freud, he entered what he called a confrontation with the unconscious, a 6-year period that looked like stagnation from the outside. In memories, dreams, reflections, he described losing all his academic ambitions. Instead of forcing it, he followed his inner world. It was from this empty period that his most revolutionary theories emerged. His daily practice shifted from asking, "What should I accomplish?" to "What is trying to emerge through me?" This proves that authentic drive feels entirely different from ego striving. It's quieter, more sustainable, and aligned with your core being. As you change, you might find that family and friends become concerned. Jung documented consistent patterns in his integrated patience. Pattern 1, a decreased tolerance for meaningless activity. They naturally moved away from social obligations that lacked authentic expression. Pattern 2, increased sensitivity to authentic versus performed emotion. Shadow work develops an authenticity detector. Pattern 3, natural rhythm recognition. They began honoring their own energy cycles instead of forcing themselves into external schedules. But Jung's most critical insight was about timing. You want to know how long this motivational void will last, but it can't be rushed. This period is an active and necessary incubation. Your unconscious is processing years of integrated material, and your psyche is reorganizing around truth, not compensation. Forcing action now, Jung warned, only creates false solutions, outward progress that bypasses the deeper work. If you feel you are in this incubation period, comment, "I trust my psyche's timing, not society's timeline." When real motivation finally does return, it feels completely different. It arises not from lack, but from what Jung called the self, the integrated whole of the psyche. It's naturally sustainable, generating energy rather than depleting it. It brings intrinsic satisfaction, where the process itself is the reward. One person likened their old motivation to running from a bear, pure survival. Their new motivation felt like walking toward a sunrise. You are not broken for feeling unmotivated. You are between psychological operating systems, and that transition is a profoundly natural process. Jung offered a practical path through this void. Phase 1 is acceptance. Stop judging yourself for the emptiness. Phase 2 is active imagination. Engage with your inner world through images and feelings without forcing a plan. Phase 3 is following the transcendent function, holding the tension between conscious and unconscious desires until a new path emerges. And Phase 4 is surrendering to individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. Remember Jung's discovery. You feel unmotivated because your original drive was never authentic. It was based on unconscious projections and social masks. The fear-based engine is gone, making space for something real. This emptiness isn't failure, it's the necessary dissolution before individuation. You didn't lose your motivation. You outgrew the wounds that created it. That's not a problem to fix, it's psychological health to celebrate. The silence you've been trying to fill is the sacred space where your authentic self can finally begin to speak.